You know that feeling when something isn't right, but you can't explain why. That's how I felt the second I stepped out of my patrol car that night. The call came in just before midnight. An elderly neighbor said she heard crying coming from the old house at the end of the street. She claimed the place had been abandoned for years. "Nobody lives there," she'd told dispatch, "but I swear to God, there's someone inside. I can hear them crying." A child, I tried to tell myself it was just a prank. Maybe kids messing around or a stray animal making noise. But something about her voice stayed with me, shaking, pleading. She sounded genuinely terrified. When I pulled up to the house, I immediately understood why. It looked like something out of a horror movie. 2 stories of rotting wood and sagging beams, windows boarded up like it was trying to keep something in. The lawn was overgrown, and the mailbox hung at an angle, rusted and empty. But what hit me the hardest was the silence. Not a single cricket, no wind rustling the trees, just this unnatural stillness. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped onto the porch. The wood groaned under my boots, loud enough to set my nerves on edge. The door was slightly ajar, swaying just enough to tap against the frame. I knocked hard. "Police, anyone inside?" Nothing. I knocked again, louder this time. The door creaked open with the force of my knock, revealing the dark interior of the house. That's when I heard it, the crying. It was faint, like it was coming from far away, but there was no mistaking it. It was a child. "Hello?" I called out, stepping inside. My voice echoed back to me, hollow and distorted. The air inside was thick and cold, colder than it should have been for a summer night. My flashlight swept across the room, illuminating dusty furniture, peeling wallpaper, and a trail of muddy footprints leading deeper into the house. I followed the footprints, my hand instinctively resting on the grip of my holstered gun. The crying grew louder as I approached a door at the back of the house. It was slightly ajar, revealing a staircase leading down into darkness. "Police, if someone's down there, speak up," I shouted. No response, just that awful, muffled sobbing. I descended the stairs, each step creaking loudly in the silence. The air grew colder with every step, and the smell hit me like a punch to the gut. Damp earth, rotting wood, and something metallic. Blood. At the bottom of the stairs, my flashlight flickered, casting erratic shadows across the room. The basement was cluttered with old furniture, broken tools, and piles of junk. But in the far corner, I saw her, a small figure, curled up against the wall, shaking violently. I approached slowly, keeping my flashlight steady. "It's okay. I'm here to help. Are you hurt?" She didn't respond. She just sat there, rocking back and forth. Her hair was matted with dirt, and her wrists were raw, like she'd been tied up. I crouched down, trying to meet her eyes. "Hey, it's all right. You're safe now." That's when she finally looked up at me. Her face was pale, her eyes wide and glassy, and her mouth moved silently, like she was trying to scream but couldn't. My blood turned to ice. Then I heard it. Behind me, a deep, deliberate creak, like someone stepping on the stairs. I froze, my flashlight trembling in my hand. Slowly I turned around, the beam cutting through the darkness. Nothing. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice cracking. No answer. When I turned back to the girl, she was gone. Panic surged through me. I swept the flashlight across the room, desperately searching for any sign of her. That's when I saw it. The wall where she'd been sitting. There were words scratched into the stone, jagged and uneven. "Help me. He's still here." A sound behind me made my heart leap. A low, raspy breath, so close I could feel it on the back of my neck. I spun around, drawing my gun, but the basement was empty. Or at least, it looked empty. The oppressive feeling of being watched was unbearable. I backed toward the stairs, never taking my eyes off the darkness around me. My flashlight flickered again, and for a split second, I thought I saw movement, a shadow darting across the far wall. My radio crackled to life, nearly making me drop the flashlight. The dispatcher's voice was frantic. "Officer Daniels, backup is en route. We just got another call. The neighbor says they saw someone watching you from the upstairs window." I didn't think. I ran. I bolted up the stairs and out of that house, the freezing air giving way to the warm night outside. When backup arrived, I briefed them on what I'd seen. They searched the house top to bottom, but found nothing. No girl, no man, no signs of anyone living there. But the scratches on the wall were real, and so was the feeling that something had followed me out of that basement. That was years ago, but I still think about that night, about the girl, the message, and whatever was in that house. I don't go near that street anymore. Some things are better left behind, even if they never really leave you. It was late fall, right before the first snow of the season. I was working the evening shift when a call came in about a missing camper in Blackwood National Park, about 20 miles outside of town. A woman had reported her boyfriend, Jake, missing. She claimed he'd gone to collect firewood hours ago and never returned. The park wasn't huge, but it was dense, thick woods, narrow trails, and enough wildlife to make you think twice about wandering off the path. Search and rescue were delayed, so I decided to head out there myself. When I arrived at the campsite, the woman, Emily, was frantic. She was pacing near the fire, her face pale and her voice shaky as she explained what happened. Jake had wandered off around 6 p.m., just as the sun was setting. She waited for him, but as darkness fell and the forest grew eerily silent, she called for help. I grabbed my flashlight and started down the trail Jake had supposedly taken. The forest was dark, pitch black, except for the faint beam of my flashlight. The trees seemed to close in around me, their bare branches twisting like skeletal fingers against the cloudy night sky. About 10 minutes in, I found something. A pile of firewood, neatly stacked in the middle of the trail. It was strange. Too perfect, like someone had placed it there deliberately. I radioed it in and Emily confirmed it was the kind of wood Jake had planned to gather. But there was no sign of him. As I moved further down the trail, things started to feel off. The usual forest sounds, chirping insects, rustling leaves, were gone. The silence was oppressive, like the whole world had hit pause. That's when I saw the footprints. They veered off the trail and into the woods, heading toward a steep incline. They were deep, like whoever made them had been running or struggling. I followed them for about 50 yards until they abruptly stopped, just stopped. There were no other prints around, no signs of a struggle. It was as if Jake had simply vanished. I stood there, my flashlight scanning the ground, trying to make sense of it. And that's when I heard it. A low, guttural sound, like a growl, coming from somewhere deeper in the woods. It wasn't a bear or a wolf. I'd heard those before. This was something different, something unnatural. I called out, "Jake, is that you?" No response. The growling grew louder, then stopped abruptly. The silence that followed was somehow worse. I turned to head back to the trail, and that's when I saw it. About 20 feet away, partially obscured by the trees, was a figure. At first I thought it was Jake, but as I raised my flashlight, I realized it wasn't. The figure was tall, unnaturally tall, and thin, with elongated limbs that didn't look human. Its skin was pale, almost translucent, and its eyes reflected the light like an animal's, glowing faintly in the darkness. It didn't move. It just stood there, watching me. I don't remember how long I stood frozen, staring at it. Could have been seconds, could have been minutes, but then it tilted its head, like it was curious. I backed away slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. When I blinked, it was gone. I sprinted back to the campsite, where Emily was waiting. I told her we needed to leave, now. She didn't argue. Search and rescue combed the area the next day but found nothing. No sign of Jake, no tracks, no evidence he'd ever been there, except for that pile of firewood on the trail. Jake was never found. I've told myself it was just an animal, maybe a trick of the light. But deep down, I know that's not true. Whatever I saw that night wasn't human, and I don't think it wanted us there.